Hello everybody, welcome back to Ultimate Scouting here. We are going to be continuing our division preview series. We are looking at the NFC North today. We're going to pound out these next couple of divisions over the next couple of days before the season gets really underway. Let's go ahead, let's hop right into it. The first team we are looking at is the Detroit Lions. They finished 3-13-1 last year. It was a really interesting season because they were one of the least talented teams in the NFL, and everyone knew that going into the season. Dan Campbell really got this team to buy into his message and play really, really hard for them. They lost a lot of really, really close games down at the very end. They had a lot of really unfortunate losses. They lost to the Ravens on a historic, longest field goal in NFL history. They tied the Steelers. They had a lot of really, really close calls as well down the stretch. But at the end of the day, Dan Campbell still had them playing really hard, and I liked the direction that this team was heading. They just lacked a lot of that really important talent to get them there. So what do? They go ahead and they try to add high-end talent the best they can. In the draft, I thought they did a really, really good job of that. You, of course, add Aiden Hutchinson, who is just such a fantastic, high-effort player. He's got a great motor. It's going to give you his absolute best every single down. He also had that hometown connection, staying in Michigan, which I think is something that is really important. He's going to be a great leader for them throughout this whole, rebuilding phase. You, of course, add Jamison Williams, who was an absolute speed demon. He probably would have gone higher in this draft if it were not for that ACL injury. Not 100% sure when he'll be ready, but he will play some this season for sure. You also add two players that I really liked. You got Pascal, the kind of 5-tech out of Kentucky. He's someone that has inside-outside versatility, someone that I really like. You can line him up opposite Aiden Hutchinson. I think they'd be a really nice duo. You can kick him inside on passing downs. That's a really nice player. And then you also had Kirby Joseph, who I think was a safety that was really underrated throughout the whole draft process. He's got a lot of range. He's got ability coming up the field. I think he's a really good developmental safety for them. And you really didn't lose much talent either. I mean, when you look at the list here, not really anybody that you're super devastated about losing. Jalen Reeves-Maybin, linebacker that played a lot of snaps for you, not really that important. Flowers, you're finally getting out of that deal. Not really a bad player. You would get replacements now to fill his role. Just nothing really that you're super upset about. You go ahead and you bring in some interesting pieces as well. You get Mike Hughes, the cornerback. He adds some nice depth. You add him to Jeff Okudah, who hopefully is going to rebound this year. So we'll see what happens. But I think the whole question with this team is that can they finally translate some of these, this young talent into wins? Because they've now built, a great offensive line. You've got Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell. That's a really good offensive line. In the weapons room, you've got DeAndre Swift, TJ Hawkinson. You added DJ Chark this offseason, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown looked really good last year. So you've got a lot of really fun weapons. Jared Goff is a mediocre quarterback. He's not as bad as people make him out to be, but he's also not really going to elevate anybody around him. He's not going to increase the level of play for the team. But I think he can field a competent offense and be able to take advantage of the weapons and the protection available to him. This year is really all about transitioning from, amassing as much young talent as you can to really trying to use that talent to start to win games and develop a winning culture. I really like the culture that Campbell has instilled. It's kind of the underdog mentality. We're here, we're going to fight you no matter what. We're going to, even if with our backs against the wall, we're going to continue fighting. We're going to scrape and claw and beat you until you submit. And that's awesome. But you've got to start establishing a culture of winning. You can't be the underdog forever. And so they've got to start really transitioning to at least showing some promise, staying in more games and starting to eke out some of those at the end and start winning those instead of, just falling short. And I think that this is a really fun team to root for. I'm looking forward to watching them this year. I think that they're a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what happens. My win prediction for this team is 4 to 9 wins. I think they are going to be much better this year. They're going to be able to start, winning 6-7 games maybe. I don't think that, they're going to be a playoff team. A lot of people are high on the Lions this year, and I like the Lions, but I don't want to put unreasonable expectations on them. This is still a young team. The defense is still kind of figuring itself out. There's a lot of pieces that are still missing, most notably an elite franchise level quarterback. And so while I think that they are going to be a fun team and much improved, I don't want to set the expectations too high. So 4 to 9 wins seems like an appropriate range for them where they can start learning how to win and then maybe go in for a franchise quarterback or go in and find some more star talent because they're going to have some picks to do it. And I'm really excited to see what this team can do. The next team we're going to be looking at is the Chicago Bears. I watch a lot of Bears football, and it's not always a pretty thing. Last year, they were really unimpressive. The offense was so poorly coached and just so not creative. And I'm excited that they're bringing in new coaching staff. Matt Nagy was getting really stale. He should have been fired last offseason. But finally, they move on. They bring in Matt Eberflus, who is a defensive-minded head coach. A lot of people are looking at that and they're saying, wow, like, Justin Fields needs an offensive-minded coach. They're already struggling offensively. Why would you bring in a defensive-minded coach? Eberflus is really going to take that CEO role and really delegate a lot of the play calling, the schemes, all of that stuff to the coordinators. For that, they bring in Luke Getsy, who is the Packers quarterbacks coach. He's someone that will kind of instill a little bit more of that Shanahan wide zone system and try to just creatively unlock this offense because there are some pieces that you really like. The question this year is, can Justin Fields prove he is a franchise quarterback, even with maybe a lackluster supporting cast around him? At wide receiver, you've got Darnell Mooney, who is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. He is really good. Behind that, there's a whole lot of question marks. You've got Velus Jones Jr., who is a third-round pick out of Tennessee. He's got some nice yak ability, maybe something that they can use. Just get him the ball quickly. You've also got Equanimeous St. Brown, Byron Pringle, some guys that really haven't been unlocked yet, but they have some nice skill sets in theory. On the offensive line, this could potentially be a really poor unit. You're relying on a lot of youth. I like that they're trying to get some developmental pieces in there, but you're relying on a 5th-round rookie to start at left tackle in Braxton Jones, who has shown good things, but he's going to have his ups and downs, no doubt about it. Cody Whitehair, you got at left guard. Lucas Patrick right now is banged up, so you're relying on Sam Mustipher, who has not played well in action, though he has a good head on his shoulders and some decent things. At right guard, you're relying on Tevin Jenkins, who there was trade rumors about him. There's just a lot of uncertainty there. He was a decent player when he played at right guard, but there's just a lot of questions. Can he stay healthy? Those kinds of things. And then a 5th-round, second-year player, Larry Borum, or Riley Reif will start at right tackle. Just a whole lot of question marks. Can it be a decent unit? Absolutely. But is it also something that terrifies me for the sake of Justin Fields? Also, absolutely. We've got Cole Kmet as well at tight end. This is just not a really explosive, exciting offense. Now, I do think that they're going to take a step up simply because the play calling has to be better. Now, that doesn't mean that I expect that this team will be better than they were last year, but I do expect that the offense can potentially take a step forward and not be, one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL, though that pretty much solely relies on the development of Justin Fields. If he can't prove that he's the guy, this team is going to be terrible. If he does prove that he's going to be the guy, then this team could, potentially be at least a decent offense. On defense, you lose Khalil Mack, of course. You lose Danny Trevathan, not that that was a loss at all. You lose Eddie Goldman, really bringing back Robert Quinn and a bunch of youth. At linebacker, you've got Roquan Smith, though there is the contract dispute. You've got Morrow there as well, but I really do like the secondary. You add Kyler Gordon to Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, and then you draft Jaquan Brisker as well. That's a nice 4 guys there, and then at slot corner, you hope that one of the existing guys can take over that role and be successful. This is a team that I think has some pieces to build around. Though I don't think that they're going to be particularly good this year. I think that they do have pieces to build around, and it's tough for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus who come into a bad situation where there was an old roster and a lot of cap issues. It was an expensive old roster. So what do? You purge everything. And so they lost some talent, no doubt about it. But it puts them in a really healthy cap situation next year. They have over $100 million in cap at the moment for 2023. So that's exciting and something for Bears fans to look forward to, even if this season is kind of a train wreck. The floor and the ceiling of this team, I put anywhere from 3 to 9 wins. I think Justin Fields would have to show a lot for this team to get to 9 wins, but I do think that in theory it's possible that because of the physical tools Justin Fields has, I was a huge fan of him coming out. I think that in theory he has the ability to elevate this team with some nice pieces here and there scattered throughout the roster. Now, if he doesn't play well, this team could be one of the worst teams in the entire league. So it's kind of a wide range there, but I will be curious to see where they end up. I expect somewhere between 5 to 7 is really the range that I expect this team to finish in, but we'll kind of see there. The next team that we are looking at is, of course, the Minnesota Vikings. They finished second in the NFC North last year with a record of 8-9. They decided that it was time to move on from Mike Zimmer, so they go ahead, they hire Kevin O'Connell, who was the offensive coordinator for the Rams under Sean McVay. Once again, another Rams offensive mind moving and becoming a head coach. They've been successful, so I understand why they would be, inclined to go after him. And I think that he's going to bring in a nice wide zone scheme and an offensive focus that can hopefully rejuvenate this team and make them competitive in a weak NFC. In theory, this team has the talent to make the playoffs, and I definitely think that they're going to be in the mix for that as the year goes on. You bring in a new analytics front office, which I think that they've had a little bit of a rocky start. It was just a terrible trade to let the Detroit Lions, your division rival, come up and get Jameson Williams, and they really didn't get much back at all. You go ahead, you pick up Lewis Seen, who I thought was an okay pick. He wasn't my absolute favorite, but it's a nice person to pair with Harrison Smith on the back end. And then they got Andrew Booth, who I was super high on Andrew Booth. He was someone that I really, really liked as a prospect. It all comes down to health with him. So if he is able to stay healthy and make an impact this year, I think that that pick is going to be really awesome. They've also got Ed Ingram as well, who may start for them at guard. So you've got a lot of high impact guys through the draft. You also bring in Zadarius Smith, who was on the Packers previously. That's a nice signing if he can stay healthy as well. Not really a whole lot else of note in the additions column. You bring in some depth here and there, but nothing that's probably going to change the whole course of the team or anything like that. A lot of that can be said, though, for the subtraction as well. You lose Mason Cole, who goes to the Steelers. Not really a massive piece there. You lose Nick Vigil, linebacker. Once again, just a decent player. You lose some pieces here and there, but you add some pieces here and there. I don't think that they really got significantly worse or significantly better this offseason. I think it's a pretty similar state of the roster here. And on offense, you're really relying on a couple of big pieces. You've got Kirk Cousins, who is a slightly above average quarterback in my mind. I think he is better than, Ryan Tannehill and those kinds of guys. But I also think he's significantly worse than Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, those type of players. He's just not very good under pressure. And, clutch moments are a big struggle for him. His decision making most of the time is really good. Sometimes it's terrible. He's just not very consistent. And so I think that makes it a little bit more difficult to really put him in that upper echelon of quarterbacks. He's got a great receiver room to throw to. Justin Jefferson is a top 3 receiver in the NFL right now. I definitely believe that. Adam Thielen, while he is on the decline, and I think that's pretty obvious, he's still a nice weapon, particularly in the red zone. He had a lot of touchdowns last year. KJ Osborne's decent as well. Irv Smith, will he finally be able to break out this year? Who knows? But he's been a popular breakout candidate for a long time. So you've got some decent pieces. You add Jalen Reagor to the mix as well. Not that that changes anything at all, but that is an interesting addition. The offensive line, you've got some decent pieces. Darisaw, hopefully, is someone that can become your franchise left tackle. You've got Brian O'Neill at right tackle, who is definitely one of the better right tackles in the NFL. The interior is nothing special. Ezra Cleveland is maybe decent. You've got some decent players on there. Ed Ingram was probably going to start as well, but that's a good enough offense. And of course, you've got Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison at running back. Both are great weapons, and I think Cook is really going to thrive this year in a outside zone scheme. That's someone that I'm really looking forward to. On defense, I think that you've got some pieces here and there. It's kind of all about health and how quickly they're declining. You've got Danielle Hunter, who has not been able to stay healthy, but when he is healthy, he's great. Eric Kendricks is getting up there in age, but he's still a really good player. Harrison Smith is on the decline, but he's still been a really good player for them. You add Scene, you add Booth. This is a fun roster. I don't know that they're going to be competing at all with the upper teams in the NFC, but I definitely think they're competitive enough to make the playoffs and maybe make some noise, win a game or two. The floor and the ceiling I see for this team is 7 to 11 wins. I really don't expect them to have a worse season than they did last year, which they won 8 games. I can see them, meeting that same mark or going up to potentially 11 wins if things really do work out and the offense really takes off under this new coaching staff. So this is an exciting team to watch. I will be curious to see where they finish, but that's about the range that I see for them. The final team that we are going to be talking about today is the Green Bay Packers. They went 13-4 last year, were prime to really make it to the Super Bowl, control the NFC. This was their year, and then they fall short once again in the divisional round to the San Francisco 49ers. Just such a disappointment that they have not been able to get over the hump. And then I think that they potentially got worse this offseason. You lose the best receiver in the NFL, Davante Adams. He doesn't want to be there anymore, and so you force to trade him to the Raiders. So that's a problem. And then you don't address the wide receiver position, really. So Aaron Rodgers, who is he going to throw to? That's the question here. You've got Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Sammy Watkins, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. None of those guys are scaring defenses. Not a single one of them. And Rodgers is a good enough player that he is going to throw with guys open, and he's going to make plays. But that's really concerning. You've got Robert Tonyan. You've got Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. This is a run-first offense probably at this point. And the running backs are great. The offensive line, you've got some really nice pieces. Josh Myers was a good addition last year. Elton Jenkins is great. Bakhtiari, if he can ever stay healthy, is one of the best tackles in football. So you've got some really nice pieces. Are you going to be able to have an explosive offense and use Rodgers to his fullest abilities with no Davante Adams and no real scary weapons on the outside? That's a problem. On defense, you've got some great players. Jair Alexander, Adrian Amos is a good player. Darnell Savage is a good player. The back end is really good. Eric Stokes showed a lot of promise towards the end of last year. You've got Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker at linebacker, though I think Walker was a terrible reach. He's probably going to be a good player for them. And on the front seven, you've got Kenny Clark. You've got Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is fantastic. I think he is a potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's a little bit of a sneaky pick there. So if you want to bet on him, I think that is a good player to bet on. I'm really impressed by this defense. They've got a lot of really good pieces. You add Devontae Wyatt to that in the draft. Might be the best defense they've had in years. But the offense is where I think that this team could run into problems. If Rodgers makes the playoffs and is forced to carry this team, I don't know that he's going to be able to do it. Regardless of how good Rodgers is, he's a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. But regardless of how good he is, he doesn't have weapons to throw to. If they get down big and you're relying on Romeo Doubs to go torch, Jalen Ramsey in the playoffs, it's probably not going to happen. So I do have my concerns about this team. I do still expect them to be good, particularly in the NFC North, that I really don't know that any of these teams are really competing for that NFC North throne. I project their win total to be somewhere between 9 and 13 wins. Though I don't know that this team is as good as they were last year necessarily, I do still think that they are the kings of the NFC North until proven otherwise. I can't, in good conscience, pick anyone else really to challenge them, I don't think. So we'll see exactly how this all plays out, but I do still think that they have the best chance of winning this division of anyone. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate you checking out these videos. I'm going to try to get these all out before the season really gets underway, and we are going to have a total record prediction video and probably a week 1 score prediction out there sometime before this week gets started. So a lot of football content coming your way. Please check it out. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff helps me out so much. I'll see you guys later. Thanks.